I'm making a bit of a design. I'm just using all these old pieces of polystyrene that were lying around. So my longest pieces that I've got, I can only reach up to 79. So I'm going to be taking all the pieces and adding them together to get 79 by 79, which will be my design. Then I've got this really, really thin, flimsy packaging, which I'm going to be cutting out all the pieces that I want my design to look like. So I'm just going for a little bit of a sun design, and once it's got the cement on it, it'll be firm enough because that's going to be glued on top of all the firm polystyrene. To glue all my pieces together, I'm using Maxi Nails because that's one product that does not eat polystyrene. You can use whatever glue that you want, but make sure that it doesn't dissolve or eat through the polystyrene. I glued all the spare pieces of polystyrene together, and to connect these tiny ones here, what I've done is I've glued them and put toothpicks in them to give them extra strength. Then I'm going to take some of the white cement and I'm just going to fill all the gaps so that I have a nice smooth surface to work on. And then I've just taken a piece of cardboard, which is the size that I need, and I've traced around it so that I get my big circle like that. To cut my circle out, I'm just using a very, very sharp little knife, and what I've done is I've placed a piece of wood underneath so that it will raise the cardboard up my table, so I can just cut easily. I've got my circle cut out now, and what I'm going to be using is this plastic cloth here. I'm just cutting off a small section, 20 centimeters long, and I'm just going to be placing it there, which is 20 centimeters from the top of my circle, and I'm placing it in the middle. And to put the plaster of Paris on, I've got a little tub of warm water, because warm water seems to work just a little bit better with the plaster of Paris. And then all you do is just dip it into the water, and it's ready to use. I'm using a 1.57mm wire, and I've cut 30 centimeters. And now what I've done is I've marked the center point and then gone 2.5 centimeters on either side of it, and I'm going to be using a 1.5 drill bit to just drill those holes through the plaster of Paris. I've just bent my wires at right angles to each other, and now I'm going to just thread that through the holes. And now I'm going to take another piece of plaster of Paris bandage, and I'm going to be placing it over the wire like that. I've got an old piece of material that I've cut so that it's just a little bit larger so that I can actually fold it over. And now what I'm going to do is, I've got this, I'm using ivory cement for this, so it's a very, very liquid consistency. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to soak that piece of material in there and then lay it on top of the cardboard. Make sure it's really, really well coated. Once you've put your cloth down, now mix up another batch of cement that is a little bit thicker, that is pliable, and then start placing a layer on top of the material. It's about 3mm thick. And now I'm just going to put that aside to dry. The nice thing about ivory cement, I don't know if you can see this on camera, when it's wet, it's green, and when it's dry, it turns white. And when it's dry, I've just bent the wires over so that they're lying flat, so I can flip this over. To create my design, what I've done is I've drawn a big circle, which the diameter is 79 centimeters. So what I've done is to get the radiuses at the right length from the top to the center point is 39.5 centimeters. And then the first line going up from the center one here goes to 30.5, and then it goes up to 29, and then the next one is at 27.5, and then it goes up to 19.5, and then 17.5, and then that one is at 10. So I've got 7 circles all in total. So that's my design that I'm going to be going for. So what I've done is I've cut out like little templates of my arrows. So the arrows I'm putting at the positions of north, south, west and east. So I've got 4 of those ones with just a small triangle in the middle, and then there's a small triangle with a smaller one inside it, and then for the center piece here, these ones are all going to be cut out, so we've just got a few little blocks, and this pattern will be repeated 4 times, so I'm just going to use that as a template, and then when it gets to this side I just reverse it so that it will fit on this section as well. And for the center piece, the parts that are shaded in blue, those are all one piece that are going to be cut out so that they look like that. Now I'm just going to cut all these little pieces out onto that very thin piece of polystyrene, and the other one is just a circle over there that I'm putting in. I've tried to keep the size of all the pieces the same, so all of them are working out at 1.5 centimeters each. And all of these pieces. These ones vary in sizes. So in the outer ring from that point to this point, I'm putting the large ones. The second line is to indicate where these ones go to. And then there's a space in between, and then I've got this pattern that's going in the 4th circle going around, and then there's a space there, and then on the 6th circle is going to be that solid piece, and on the 7th circle, which is a solid circle, which is just going to be these small pieces going in onto that particular piece. So the center circle is not actually going to be there, it's going to be on the main piece. So I've cut most of my pieces out on the polystyrene now, and I've decided to go for the 2 centimeter polystyrene instead of the very, very thin, flimsy one, because it just was not working. And I'm not particularly happy with the spacing on these, so I'm going to actually be cutting these down just a little bit. On the paper it looked great, but in the polystyrene it's just a little bit too big. But that's what it's looking like at the moment. So that all my pieces are nice and smooth, I'm going to take a 240 grit sandpaper and just sand them all a wee bit smooth, because some of them I've got like really big ugly bits like that, so I'm going to just sand those all. I've modified my pieces by keeping this one a full length and doing a 3/4 and then a half piece, so it's a graduated step going down. And my little circles, I've taken one circle and cut it in half so that it sits lower than the other pieces. So that's how I've modified these pieces and the circles. Once it's dry, I'll be placing all the pieces onto it. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking my largest piece, which is the one that goes on the outside, and I'm putting it on my compass so that I can get the exact size, and then I'm going to be drawing a circle so that I can place all those pieces in the right position like that, and so that they're all sitting on the same line. So I've just tipped all my pieces out, and now I'm going to be arranging all the pieces, and then I'm going to be using maxi nails to then glue them all down. Please make sure when you're using a glue that it is compatible with polystyrene and that it does not dissolve it or eat it. I've placed all my big pieces in position and now I'm going to glue those in. I've placed all the small pieces in their positions, and what I've done is I've decanted some of the glue into a plastic plate, and I'm just going to dip these into that and then glue them on. For the small pieces on the inside here, I'm going to be using a pair of pliers because my fingers are a little bit too chunky to get these ones nice and even. So I'm just using a long nose pliers like that because my tweezers don't open wide enough, and then dipping those ones into the glue and putting them on. So I've placed all the other little triangles in all the spaces and the circles, and now I'm on to the last ones, which are these ones. So all the pieces are in place now, and now I'm going to take some of this macrame cord and put it all the way around the border. So all the pieces are in place now, and the cord is around the edges, and now I'm just going to wait for all of that to dry before I move on to the next step. What I've done now is I've mixed 50-50 of PVA glue and water, and I'm going to be painting that all over the cardboard so that the cement will stick to it. I just paint the whole piece of cardboard. Once again, I'm going to be using ivory cement, and I'm going to make it into a very liquid consistency. And to make it into the consistency that I want, I'm adding this Bondcrete, which is a cement adhesive, and I'm doing a 30 to 70% ratio to water. So it's 30% glue and 70% water. So that's the consistency that I've got, and I'm just going to paint it all over my plaque. Make sure when you're pouring your mixture on that you're covering all the little side pieces here as well. So I'm just pouring it all over. I've covered my whole piece now, and don't worry if you haven't covered each and every single piece, because you can cover that in the next pour, but just do your best to try and cover them all. The cement is all dry on the first coat. Now, for myself personally, I like the texture to be a little bit rough, but if you want it a bit smoother, you can give it a quick sand before you put your next coat on. So if you've got some bumps that you don't like, just sand those before you put your next coat on. Because my plaque is going to be going onto a corrugated surface, what I'm doing is taking this thin polystyrene packaging and I'm going to be gluing it onto the back so that when I hang this, the polystyrene will actually give it a bit of support and bend into the shape of the corrugated surface. Because I don't have a solid piece of polystyrene, I've just taped two pieces together with some masking tape, and now I'm just going to draw the circle on it. I've mixed up the cement, and as you can see it's a rather runny consistency. And now I've cut some material which is just 10 centimeters wide, and I'm going to soak that in the cement. And then just go all the way around. I've got this very ugly piece of corrugated plastic, but as you can see it's starting to peel with all the fiberglass fibers showing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it all, because this is where my big plaque is going to be going. And I put one coat of blue paint on it, and there's my piece in position now. Thank you so much for watching.